speaker up, your download. Are you sure? That's right. Even not do the whole show.
Commissioners, to order. We're going to start off with prayer and the pledge. So if Pastor Ben Aguilera could please come forward and get us started, that'd be great.
Thanks for having me. It's almost as fun as a church service. Would you pray with me? Dear Heavenly Father, our Creator, Sustainer, and Redeemer, we thank you for gathering us here today. For in front of us, we know that it's not just another board meeting to discuss policy and procedure, but in front of us is the work of caring for the well-being of our neighbors. And as we do this, let us be mindful of the weight of leadership in caring for the needs of humanity in our county. So, Lord, I pray that you give our county commissioners a humble heart to listen to the people and also to the ears of one another. I pray that you give them the wisdom to make the best decision, not only for those in this room, but for those who are not in this room, especially those on the margins, those oppressed, and those in great need. For Jesus, you once said, as you did it to one of the least of these, you did it to me. So, Lord, we pray that your kingdom come, your will be done, and let the fruit of this meeting bring those words to pass. In the words of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., "O God, make us willing to do your will. Come what may, increase the number of persons of goodwill and moral sensitivity." And as we are here because we do in fact care about the goodwill of all, and we want to be in alignment with your will, Jesus. So let our hearts be softened and our minds be open to the new things, Jesus, that you want for us. And God, I do pray that each and every one of us grows in our understanding of your love and grace. For your love keeps no record of wrongdoing. And I pray, Lord, that this love and grace shape our hearts and transforms us as a people and as a county. In your precious name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could please stand and join us for the pledge. Right. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Yes, sir. Ms. Cosby.
Here.
Mrs. Ebel.
Here.
Mr. Zylstra.
Here.
Mr. Bonema. Here. Mr. Moss.
Here.
Mrs. Wenzel.
Present, I'm in Hudsonville.
Mrs. Curran,
Here.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Here.
Mr. Belknap,
Here.
Mr. Bergman. Here. Mr. Meadam, Mrs. Meadama.
Here.
Sorry,
So
we do have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Wenzel is joining remote, and so we'll be participating remotely due to illness. And so any votes tonight will be by roll call. So moving into correspondence, we have an early voting update from Clerk Roebuck.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be brief, but I did want to just update the board on some of the significant progress that we've been making on the early voting process since I last talked to you guys in September. So we are fully staffed at this point with, according to our municipal agreement roadmap, which calls for a full-time election logistics specialist. So Ken Berry, we've hired Ken as an internal hire. He actually worked for our circuit court records division for quite a while, but a very good logistical mind and has been really plowing through a lot of that logistical stuff that's been needed, the site setup and the supplies and the kind of onboarding and coordinating election workers and ensuring election equipment's ready to go. So we're very excited about that. We also just hired our temporary part-time position, which was approved. The budget was approved for that beginning in January. And so Morgan McDonald is our essentially assistant to the election logistics specialist, and she's been doing great work for us even just this past couple of weeks. So all good news there. So as we have mentioned, and you probably have heard, 4 early voting sites. Those have all been identified. They've all been approved by the County Election Commission. Polkton Township, Georgetown Township, and Grand Haven Township have all been gracious enough to basically allow us the use of their township facilities, which is really great in a lot of ways. I think it's places where people in the community know that they can go. It's also essentially free of charge for us. There's some moderate upfront, sorry, I'm missing the word, the deposits that are required under those agreements, but certainly a great deal for us. And then the 4th location in Holland is actually the county site. So the county's a great host too. I like those guys. The county's great. And our facilities has just been fantastic and working with us through that process there. And that's at James Street in the MDHHS building, which is directly behind the brand new Holland Township Fire Station. We're going to be in there. Something I don't often get to say, and this is that the state funding will be more than what we anticipated, which is pretty extraordinary. Honestly, initially we were basically told the funding is going to cover the basics of the election equipment itself. And then we were hoping for some additional funding for at least election workers, kind of a baseline for election workers. And so we submitted that grant information according to what the state wanted. They've covered those costs, but then have asked us and others around the state, of course, to resubmit our grants asking for additional items. And so we have done that and, basically added all kinds of additional things in there. And so whatever the state will cover, I think we're very excited about that. We're at this point anticipating well over $1 million in savings to Ottawa County taxpayers. We're initially looking at that $700,000 mark for the year 2024. But super excited about that. We have secured a vendor for the video camera installation for those secure rooms, the secure facilities where election equipment is stored overnight, the early voting locations, and that is Night Watch. So you may be familiar with Night Watch because we already have a contract here through the county for our security systems here. So that's worked out really well. IT and facilities has sort of facilitated that process also, which has been great. So Night Watch has been on site at all 4 of those locations, kind of working out the details of ensuring that we have access to that footage during the early voting periods, and then that is shut off for the sake of our local jurisdictions who are hosting us. We retain the footage, of course, but then it's not actually taking video footage during non-early voting days of the year. The line management tool has also been secured, and that's provided by Esri, which you're probably familiar with a little bit. It's a GIS vendor with whom we're very familiar, and the county already works with. Our own GIS department uses a lot of their tools, and that's made it extremely cost effective. And this is just really a pretty simple basic tool for taking a measurement every 15 to 30 minutes of what the crowd looks like. You know, how long does it take somebody when they walk in the door, time that it takes from the door to the time where they're going to the voting booth. So that's an easy metric to measure with the Esri tool. And that will provide us a dashboard. The public will be able to see that online, but then also I think it's going to provide us some great data on the back end of just when are the busy times, when are people coming to vote early. So we're excited about that. And then finally, we have made the decision to move forward with watermark ballots in the early voting sites for this February 27 election. We're excited about the ability to do that. And mainly, initially we had, set the August state primary as our goal. And I'm excited to be able to do it early because I think that the main reason is that the number stub process of accounting for ballots is still happening in our precincts. So we're still moving forward with that accountability measure and accounting measure in precinct ballots and in absentee ballot situations. But early voting just doesn't have that option anywhere because of the way that early voting is structured. And so being able to be a little bit flexible and get a great vendor to provide watermark ballot stock for us ahead of schedule is going to be exciting. And we are going to be conducting a public test of all of this stuff on Tuesday, February 5. Come one and come all. We would love to have you there. We're excited about this public test too, because it's obviously being conducted under the auspices of the Election Commission, which by law is required to take place under the authority of the Election Commission. But we are also, the Election Commission has appointed, and I'll be deputizing 5 Republican and 5 Democratic election essentially assistants to help us with this process. And so while it's obviously open to anybody in the public, we're kind of getting a good bipartisan representation of folks who are going to be present, helping us test over 10,000 ballots on Monday, the 5th of February. So that is my quick update. A lot of stuff happening, but happy to answer any questions too.
Great. Thank you. Commissioner Zalstra.
Thanks. Just on locations, is that going to change going forward? Do you have any ideas on that or no?
So these locations are all locked in for 2024. So
Okay.
we will be utilizing the same date, time, days of the week, I should say, days and times and locations for our voters for February, August, and November.
Okay.
And the legal notice that was required to be sent out under the municipal agreement with the county, hopefully you guys got that. That was, required essentially to be paid for by the locals, but mailed by the county. And we were able to save some dollars on that as well by getting a legal opinion from the Bureau of Elections that could be householded rather than sent to actual individual voters. I had a suspicion that our voters would be more upset than anything else if they were, 4 voters in the household and they're getting 4 cards mailed to them with the same information. And so we saved about $20,000 on that mailing alone. Yeah, so those locations are all the same.
Commissioner Miedema.
Couple questions on your public test. I think you had mentioned Tuesday, February 5, but then you said Monday. So
Yeah,
it
sorry,
February
it's
5?
Monday the 5th.
okay.
Yeah.
And then what's the location and time?
Here in the Fillmore Main Conference Room. So the public test is slated to take place at noon, but we will be processing. Essentially, 1 precinct is required under the statute for the public test. So we will be here much longer than that 1 precinct. So you can actually come anytime from 9 to 4. But
Thank you.
yeah.
Commissioner Cosby.
Couple of things. So congratulations on the watermark ballots and having those
Yeah.
come early. Thank you very much for making that effort. Question for you, the certification of machines is that what's the expectation of machine certification? I know that was one of the issues of the previous, 2020 election.
Yeah, so the certification of the equipment is actually done at the state and federal level under the EAC and under the auspices of the Board of State Canvassers and the Vistal partners that are used, the basically certified labs that test and certify the equipment. So the equipment's all been certified previous to this, but the public test, the public logic and accuracy testing of equipment actually takes place before every single election. So every single piece of equipment that's used in any election is tested under these logic and accuracy standards, or we're running a series of ballots through, some of them correctly marked, some of them incorrectly marked, to ensure that the machine's counting the way it's supposed to.
Wonderful, thank you. And then I know you have been conducting some education, public education, correct, for voters? How well has that been attended?
Well, so our training kicks off on Thursday, and we are booked solid. So we have, I think we've capped it at 80 in the main conference room just because of the spacing, and we're doing like hands-on stuff for our election workers. So we need to have a little bit of space in there. So we're at 80 folks. I know Thursday, Friday, and then into next week. And then we have early voting training that's also happening in the afternoons later this week, and then into the following week. And then some of the stuff too that we're trying to do just on the public education side. I think this election is kind of a confusing one for folks. And so we're trying to get the word out as much as possible. We did a little Facebook Live, like just kind of going through the basics, and that's had over 1,000 views in a couple of days. And so I think that's positive. Hopefully that's, getting the word out. But
So has that been recorded then? So people
Yeah.
know to look.
Yeah, you
for
can
it,
go
they
back
look
and-
for it on the website under your department?
yes, so it's going to be in our newsletter that's going out in a couple of days. It's already on our social media pages. I don't think it's on the website currently.
And do you foresee any problems like with transportation or, I mean, you're doing a great job with communication, it seems like, but it's just, we can't help but over communicate when we're reducing to 4 different locations rather than precincts.
Well, it's definitely not a reduction. It's an expansion, and it's an expansion of 9 days
Right.
for people to vote. And on election day, they'll be voting in their same precincts. So there's no difference in the precinct process. So, absentee continues as is, obviously. Precinct voting as is, and then the expansion of 9 days of early voting at these vote center sites. So no, the county is prohibited by law from providing transportation. But public now, thanks to some changes in the legislature over the past few months, other interested parties can provide transportation. So yeah, we try to stay out of that one.
Thank you.
Anything else? One question I had was related to the stock. I remember talking about this early, and you had questions on the stock and making sure you could run these through thousands, at a time. How did that work out?
So yeah, it's worked well for the early voting watermark ballots, and that's great. So we have our vendor, Hart InterCivic, actually has a partnership and a relationship with a paper company that provides watermark stock, and it's been approved by Hart InterCivic. It's been tested, obviously, many hundreds of thousands of times through their systems, but also we're going to be testing it extensively on the 5th as well. The challenge that we're facing is getting those printed ballots. So this is blank stock, right? That will be printed. And the challenge that we're facing is making sure that we have the right amount of paper stock with our print vendor that we have a contract with for printing our ballots. And that's still kind of what we're working through with that August deadline.
Okay.
But we're hopeful, very confident that we'll be able to do that.
Great.
There's a
Anything
lot of
else?
testing in our future.
I'm sure. Thank you. Thank you for that. Anything else? Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Justin. Really
Yeah.
appreciate the updates.
Absolutely.
And next up on the agenda is public comments. This is the opportunity for members of the public to come and address the board. Be given 3 minutes, and please address your comments to the chair. Do we have a list?
We do have 13 currently registered.
Great.
Public comment number 1 is Tom Parker, City of Zealand.
Is there a timer, Justin?
Oh, I apologize.
Just making sure.
There we go.
Okay. Good evening, Tom Parker, City of Zeeland. In Zeeland, our residents, its city council, and school board value good governance. My observation of the Ottawa Impact faction of the Ottawa County Board has shown with policy and words that they don't mirror our Zeeland values of good governance. Let us compare and contrast. Like Ottawa County, Zeeland City Council has several boards. Our boards include only one city council on each of the boards. The vast majority of our boards are made up of the residents. Contrast this with the current Ottawa County boards. Several are now stacked with many or in some cases, a majority of Ottawa Impact commissioners. This means that county citizens with professional expertise and personal experience are no longer a majority, but a minority on these boards. Earlier this month, Joe Moss kneecapped Commissioners Bergman, Bonema, and Zylstra by decreasing their seats on county boards. As a resident of Zeeland, I stand with those who now lack fair representation. Why were these decisions made? Is this about dominance and control? This smells to me of cronyism, revenge, and insecurity. Our Zeeland city government seeks and values its citizens' input, not a stacked deck. We model and respect our US Constitution by reflecting we the people, not we the politicians and we the power hungry. When attending our Zeeland Public School Board meetings, I also witnessed good governance. Whether it's showcasing our award-winning robotics team, art department, or athletics, we see the work of students, staff, and community members being presented, praised, and celebrated. Contrast this with our county departments whose leaders and employees give updates and reports to you in this chamber. I've witnessed them being belittled, reprimanded, and questioned to the point of exhaustion. Our school board would never treat a teacher, principal, or staff member in such a dehumanizing and shameful manner. Despite any self-congratulations or patting himself on the back that Joe Moss may give himself and Ottawa Impact tonight, his poor leadership will never match all the good leadership which occurs in Zeeland. I invite you to come over for a visit and feel the zeal of good governance. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you.
Number 2 is Luke Sanner, Park Township.
Hello, Luke Sanner, Park Township. I'd like to express my concerns regarding one of the proposed amendments to the county policy on policies. The policy currently requires a 2/3 vote to suspend operation of a board policy. The proposed change would allow a policy to be suspended with a simple majority vote. The summary of changes in the packet for tonight's meeting claims that this change is consistent with statute and board rules. I would challenge Mr. Gibbs to cite the portion of statute being used as justification for this change. I am unable to find anything that fits. In fact, MCL 46.3.1 states, a majority of the members of the County Board of Commissioners of a county constitutes a quorum for the transaction of the ordinary business of the county. I would argue that suspending a standing policy does not constitute ordinary business, and that such an action should be held to a higher bar. Nothing in MCL 46.3 requires that this change be made. Changing an established policy with a simple majority vote only helps to pave the way for the chair's planned agenda. Yet again, Joe Moss wants what is best for him rather than for the people of Ottawa County.
Thank you.
Number 3 is Dan Zimmer, Port Sheldon Township.
Good evening. Dan Zimmer, Port Sheldon Township. Chairman Moss. The state of the county is making steady improvement. District members have been organizing. Political action committees are forming. Candidates are announcing. The state of the county is improving. Chris Kleinjans is the people's choice, a strong candidate who will bring closure to the grassroots recall in District 2. The state of the county is improving. Letters to the editor indicates growing concern with Ottawa impact and the tactics you peddle. The state of the county is improving. Hudsonville Mayor Mark Northrup announced his candidacy to run in District 5. The state of the county is improving. OC1, a group of grassroots concerned citizens in District 1, held launch meeting with seating capacity full. Ottawa Coalition of Unifying Congregations, Zealand Area Action Committee, On Track, North Ottawa Tri-Cities Action Committee are growing. The state of the county is responding. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Sunday, January 28th at 6:51 p.m., I received an email. It granted permission to mention the following. Rebecca Patrick has provided current and concise public comment. Many know her as someone who lives intentionally for excellence. She is a friend and will make a great commissioner for Allendale and District 8. Stay tuned, District 8. Rebecca had a prior commitment that did not allow her to be here. The state of the county is strong. The momentum builds. The future of Ottawa County is resilient. The tide has turned. It will take time and effort to repair the damage that you and Ottawa Impact have created. However, in your absence, it will be done. Lots of luck, Joe, with your state of the county. The who, the what, the where, the why, the when of Ottawa Impact is known. You can no longer sell vaporware.
Thank you.
Number 4 is Donna Mooney, Georgetown Township.
Good evening, Donna Mooney, Georgetown Township. I'd like to call attention to the case of Jody May of Granville, who was disciplining her 15-year-old daughter by taking the teenager's cell phone away when Jody was accused of stealing the phone by her ex-husband. Assistant Prosecutor Sarah M., who is running for county prosecutor in November, prosecuted Miss May before ultimately asking the judge to dismiss the case as it was going to trial. As a voter and a parent, I have some questions that I feel deserve answers from Sarah. Barring abuse or neglect, why would you prosecute a mother for disciplining her child instead of telling the father to take it back to family court where it belonged? What sort of investigation was done before this went all the way to a bench trial before finding out that the phone was a gift and requesting the charges be dismissed? As a parental rights advocate, it is unacceptable that we would put an innocent person through a criminal process that can have catastrophic consequences such as potential loss of child custody, job, livelihood, money spent on an attorney, and so on. I encourage every voter who values your rights as a parent to vote for constitutional attorney Greg Todd for county prosecutor. We must honor the rights of our parents and bring common sense back into this type of decision-making. In Ottawa County, we as residents are facing the shutdown and demolition of the J.H. Campbell Power Plant in May of 2025 without a reliable backup source of energy. Why aren't questions being asked about load shedding, which is the word salad to describe rolling blackouts that would be inevitable if this goes through? Where are the fields of solar panels that don't work in the winter? Will the privilege of charging a car be extended to those in apartment complexes with a charging station in each parking spot, or will that be reserved for only property owners who can afford it? How about those EVs in the freezing weather? We've gotten to a place where people truly believe that by giving up reliable sources of energy, such as coal and natural gas, that they're saving the planet because of propaganda being pushed throughout all forms of media 24/7. We might as well go back to before the wheel was invented. Maybe we can all just go back to riding horses. It'll be like we never advanced, except that horses fart, and that's killing the planet too. And maybe I would believe some of this con job if it weren't for the fact that the only scientists not censored are those pushing the government and the World Economic Forum driven climate narrative, all designed to control. I have a challenge for the media. Please ask your superiors if you can investigate and report on the World Economic Forum's actual one world government agenda. Please ask your superiors if you can investigate and report on the injuries and deaths caused by the COVID vaccine instead of the only side they will allow, which promotes it as safe and effective. I dare you to go against your media bosses to report on the other side of the debate. I guarantee they will shut you down, and that makes you a mouthpiece for controlled propaganda. The other side of the debate is also now called misinformation and disinformation. This is censorship. Find out who Klaus Schwab and Yuval Harari are, the snakeheads of the World Economic Forum, facilitating the destruction of life as we know it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 5 is Sugnan Nango, City of Hudsonville. Certainly. Number 6 is Karen Obitz, Spring Lake Village.
Good evening, Karen Obitz, Spring Lake Village. As I was preparing this public comment, in which I intend to focus on what I expect to hear later tonight in the State of the County report, my thoughts went back to last week's meeting of the board's newly created Strategic Planning Committee. I'd like to begin by pointing to the inconsistencies I see between the track record of this Ottawa Impact Majority dominated board in incurring exponentially increased administrative costs with no observable positive return on investment, I might add, and the cost of service delivery approach to strategic planning championed at that Strategic Planning Committee meeting. Specifically, with respect to unnecessary administrative costs incurred last year, I'm referring to the firing of the former administrator and the choice to replace him with a political appointee who, in turn, hijacked established hiring practices and making more political appointments in Epperson and Wetmore, one of which resulted in yet another court case. I should point out that none of these 3 staff members have any previous municipal government experience, and it shows. In addition to the monetary costs related to severance packages and an inflated job description for the administrator's assistant, the costs associated with the loss of institutional knowledge that exited this building with John Shea and Patrick Waterman are incalculable. These costs represent just a small portion of what I saw last year in this Ottawa Impact Board's approach to governance that both revealed the costly and destructive results of willfully ignoring the inherent differences between government and private industry, and from doing so while guided by an ideology that insists on its own way by stacking the board's standing committees and the county's additional committees and boards with those who endorse that ideology. So what I wish I could expect to hear from Joe Moss during his delivery of the State of the County report tonight is an acknowledgement that he now sees how Ottawa Impact's wins at the ballot box have not translated into successful governance. I'd also like to hear an acknowledgement from him that ideologically framed campaign promises that result in worthless but divisive resolutions, court cases, and a concerning drop in county employee morale among the staff that haven't yet headed to the exit do not make for good governance. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 7 is Deb Cizik, Port Sheldon Township.
Deb Cizik, District 1, Port Sheldon Township. Here's my take on the state of our county, despite what spin you're going to hear later in the meeting. Little has changed as we entered term 2, and this is only in the past month. 1, unprecedented departures and a great loss of institutional knowledge across many departments. As of yesterday, 19 of 39 job postings on the county website are for community mental health, public health, and fiscal services, with an average posting of 1 month and usually more. Continued micromanagement of county programs and well-qualified employees. After months of ridiculous questioning and stall tactics, contract extensions for social recreational programs were finally granted. That may explain why nearly half of the current unfilled job postings are in community mental health. 3, undermining the professionalism and experience of commissioners that do not align with your ideology, evidenced by standing committees that do not allow for equal representation among commissioners or their respective constituents. 4, removing a citizen position from the CMH board and replacing with a selected commissioner who already sits on multiple committees. So much for government overreach that OI said they would thwart. 5, lack of transparency. Although the contract with Ottawa states that those who sign on the dotted line will, quote, support steps to make county information public by default to increase transparency and accountability. Private information should be the exception for public servants, end of quote. We surely have hammered this topic to no avail, not to mention knowing that allegiance to a signed contract excludes many county constituents. Lastly, pending lawsuits, still costing taxpayers, still distracting from the job that you were elected to do. We are a divided community, which in a nutshell is the state of the county. We will continue to fight harder and smarter because Ottawa Impact is not the most transparent Board of Commissioners, as you would like to claim, but rather a blight on our vibrant community. You underestimated the persistence and intelligence of county citizens, well-versed in public policy and Robert's Rules of Order, who tirelessly hold you accountable for your neglect of duties to the residents of Ottawa County. We are long overdue for a return to good governance, fiscal responsibility, full transparency, and respectful leadership.
Thank you.
Number 8 is Joseph Parnell McCarter, Georgetown Township.
Reliable, affordable, environmental, electric power is something that should unite us all but Governor Whitmer's plan fails on all 3 counts. Attorney General Nessel sued Consumers Energy over the J.H. Campbell electricity plant located right here in Ottawa County that provides reliable electricity to 1 million people. This valuable plant will close in May 2025. It is closing even before we have things ready to take its place because Whitmer wants to close all coal-powered and hydroelectric plants. Her solutions are solar panels and wind turbines that are not reliable for West Michigan. Experts admit that our electric grid is at risk without coal and natural gas. Number 2, solar and wind energy will make electricity more expensive for West Michigan. Coal-generated electricity is much less expensive than solar or wind and is even less expensive than natural gas. We will spend more money to pay for our electric bill. Number 3, in the past 10 years, $1 billion was spent in cleaning up the Campbell plant with the intention of keeping it open to the year 2040. But there is no good plan for disposing all of the Chinese-made solar panels with toxic chemicals once their lifespan is over. And over 200,000 more acres of Michigan farmland will be wasted and become solar panel fields. Governor Whitmer and her team passed a law to overthrow the ability of towns to prevent these solar panel fields because Lansing will now take over local zoning laws. It is great for China because we buy their solar panels. Our factories and businesses will pay higher electric bills and American goods will be more expensive to compete with cheap products from China. The Save the Campbell campaign, Save the Campbell campaign is a grassroots effort by local citizens to keep the Campbell plant running. Local control via Home Rule Charter is the only legal, effective way to do this. The county can initiate attaining a charter by getting 5% of county electors to sign a petition to put the question on the ballot. I would encourage all county citizens go to savethecampbell.com and select the menu option at top, add my name as petitioner signer. We are gathering a database of signers to sign petition forms so we get local control on the ballot. We are also using it to help gather signatures for Citizens for Local Choice so that townships can get back control of zoning in order to thwart exploitation. Go to savethecampbell.com to become a petition signer. We need to obtain more local control so that Washington, D.C. and Lansing do not impose a misguided agenda on us that makes us the losers and Communist China the winner. Finally, let's pray that God blesses us, for He alone is sovereign.
Thank you.
Number 9 is Sheila Detloff, Holland Township.
Good evening, Sheila Detloff, Holland Township. I'm not going to talk about a power plant that wasn't even providing power to Ottawa County. What I do want to talk about is John Gibbs's request for another $100,000 to have an outside vendor do something that frankly, he should be able to do himself, given his extensive resume. In the business world, you don't spend new capital unless you have a plan to pay it back. Nothing has been shown to date that he or you, Joe, have even considered this basic business fact. It raises a whole bunch of questions for me. When will the people of Ottawa County have a net positive cash flow from these projects? Just where is the break-even point on a $100,000 expenditure? Using John Gibbs's own metrics on cost per service, what is the ratio this purchase must meet in order to justify it? Does this purchase fit into John Gibbs's metrics? Has he even looked at it that way? Also, why the need to compare to other jurisdictions of similar sizes? Just what is he aiming to achieve with that? And how is he going to factor in all extenuating circumstances and idiosyncrasies of different jurisdictions? I can't wait to FOIA the documentation on that. We would not need to finance this additional $100,000 expense if we had a competent administrator. It's extravagant and unnecessary. You want to enhance cost per service? Hire a different administrator. But it sounds like you might be thinking about that anyway. And since I have some time left, I would also like to point out that Sylvia was apparently pretty confused about Robert's rules in the last meeting. I looked this up. She was attempting to defend Joe's kind of strange and self-serving habit of announcing how he's going to vote. In fact, what Robert's rules actually says is that the chair must remain neutral and should not participate in debate. And if they do decide to participate, they must relinquish the chair position until after the vote. Nowhere does Robert's rules recommend signaling to everyone else how you're going to vote. And the only purpose in stating what side of a motion you're on is so the chair can alternate debate between those for and against. You know, a copy of Robert's rules will only set you back about $20, and it's probably a much better cost per service ratio than $100,000. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 11 is Dina Arner, Holland Township.
Good evening, Dina Arner, Holland Township. I noticed on the agenda that you're going to give us a state of the county report tonight, Joe. How grand of you. I'm not going to say anything about delusions of grandeur. That would be unnecessary. But I would hope that you are at least honest in your state of the county and don't leave out some of the important accomplishments that you have to your credit for the past year. After all, not all of your endeavors were quite as successful as your bid to put Christina Caramo in charge of the Michigan Republican Party. So let's start with day one. When you guys started last January, the first thing you did was fire Commissioner or Administrator John Shea, racking up cost with his leaving the job early. He was a well-respected member of the staff here. We can tell he is a good administrator because he was snapped up right away by a neighboring district who was happy to have the benefit of his years of experience and his excellent work. Then you gave the job to someone who, as far as we know, did not apply for the job because there was no job listing. Surprise, surprise, so much for regular order. And for that, you chose someone who had already been rejected by the majority of voters in District 3, which overlaps with part of Ottawa County. So you already know how the people in this area feel about that administrator. And then he went on to prove what a good decision it was to hire him by immediately not being able to do the job that previous administrators had done and whining that he needed an assistant to do half of his job because apparently the job that he thought he was so overqualified for, turns out he was underqualified for it. But we still paid his salary, and then we set aside a salary for his assistant. And lo and behold, we listed all of these great requirements for this assistant. They should have a master's degree. They should have experience on a nonprofit board. And did you pick the person that met those requirements? No, because Mr. Gibbs needed someone who was younger than him so that he could boss him around. That is not the mark of a good administrator or a good boss, that they only feel that they can show authority over people who are younger than them. So great decision-making there. And also great decision-making, picking someone who does not meet hardly any of the qualifications for a job. That does not bode well for how your decision-making process goes. We could also get into your brilliant decision to let go the long-term legal authority here in the county and hire someone at twice the price, and then proceed to make decisions that make sure that we will have plenty of lawsuits so that they will get plenty of money. Makes us wonder how much you're getting in kickbacks, Joe. That might decision.
Thank you.
Number 12 is Harvey Nickel, Georgetown Township.
Thank you. I'm Harvey Nickel from Jenison. Thank you for standing up for our constitutional rights and freedoms. We have a real problem that is not being addressed by our health department nor investigated by the mainstream media. During COVID, we constantly saw real-time tickers on every news broadcast showing the COVID deaths. Now it's just crickets with respect to the number of people who are dying. The number of obituaries that contain the words died suddenly or died unexpectedly increased 63% in 2021 and 52% in 2022 as compared to 2020 during COVID. The number of athletes that died from cardiac arrest from 1970 to 2020 is 1,312. But the number who died in 2021 and 2022 is 1,598. In other words, in 2 years, 152% more healthy young people died than in the previous 50 years. In Israel, the number of cardiac arrests in 2021 increased by 192% from 2020, and in 2022 increased 431% over 2020. A naval medical officer analyzed the DMED data for fixed wing and helicopter pilots and found that myocarditis is up 151% and heart failure has increased a whopping 973% since the COVID shots were mandated on our military. Canada reports a 300% increase in unspecified causes of death, and at least 132 Canadian doctors have died suddenly or unexpectedly since the COVID-19 vaccine rollout began. In this country, the Society of Actuaries reported that life insurance payouts for deaths of 35 to 44-year-olds increased by 34% during the last quarter of 2022. In Ottawa County, the deaths in 2022 were 13% higher than they were in 2019. In 2023, the excess deaths in the US were 17% higher, 16% higher in Australia, and 14% higher in New Zealand. A United Kingdom study shows that the number of health insurance claims for hematological disorders is up by 522% in 2022 as compared to 2019. And another study shows that the cancer deaths have skyrocketed in young people of ages 15 to 44. Now researchers find that the shots are contaminated with DNA fragments. DNA integration poses a unique and elevated risk in human health and the integrity of the human genome. For that reason, the Surgeon General of Florida, Dr. Joseph Ladapo, has called for the halt of all mRNA C19 vaccines. Yet, the Ottawa County Health Department is still following the CDC narrative and is promoting the COVID shot as being safe and effective. It is not safe and effective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 13 is Alpha Mansray, Holland Township.
Good evening, commissioners, and thank you for the opportunity to address you this new year in 2024. I had a chance to reflect this past year, what the Board of Commissioners for Ottawa County has accomplished. And I can say it is with such disappointment that really there was nothing of substantive value that was really achieved for our county and for the benefit of our citizens. And so as I look back this past year, we just celebrated a birth in where God, actually in the book of Luke 1:26, he approached a virgin and by the name of Mary. And then she was somebody who was going to birth something. Like so many of us, she's unlikely, she's unpredictable, unexpected, and unusual. So God had a greeting and announcement that said that you are highly favored and blessed. So she was called not by her name, for her assignment. And so she was given the process of how this was going to take place. And one of the things that was not mentioned in that process was Joseph. And the subject of my comment today is somebody's got to tell Joe, no pun intended. One of the things that God did was that the pregnancy was going to be through Mary, a virgin, and then she's going to give birth to one thing and it's going to have a shift. The birth will give to everything. And one of the things that's really spectacular about that story is you cannot birth something of value and remain full. It requires you to be empty. God says she was blessed and highly favored. How can this be? She said, but we're told, don't get stuck on the how. Focus on the now, because the how will stop the now. So it's going to take a shift. So one of the things that she is really tasked with doing is really to keep pushing. So in the light of 2024, I hope you keep your mandate to just keep pushing because a pregnancy requires push. Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 14 is Emma Geringer, Spring Lake Township. Emma Geringer. And that would be the final public comment other than Sugnen Nango from the city of Hudsonville.
Hi, Commissioners. My name is Sunan. I'm coming in from Hudsonville, Michigan. I'm a mother of two toddlers who are 3 and 2 years old, as well as a survivor of domestic violence. I'm currently fighting for custody of my 2 babies in an Ottawa County courthouse because I was married to someone who specifically married me to stay in this country and obtain immigration benefits. By the time I learned about this plan, I also learned that he had planned to send my children to a woman in Nigeria. And so I have been on a quest to keep both of my children safe from our abuser since I moved in 2022. And there are several questionable court officers in Ottawa County who have tried to dismiss me or sweep my concerns under the rug, even though I have concrete evidence. But I'm thankful that the chief judge is at least listening to me. There are many complicated facets of my case, and it has been an uphill battle, but I'm hopeful. I used to have an attorney, but after deep reflection, God gave me the courage to take this case on my own because there are just several facets of my case that I feel like would be best described to the justice system from my lips. And so I'm obeying his will for me in this case. And when this is behind me, I do want to help other people who have gone through the system. And right now, I'm just asking for your support. You may not know me at all, But if you are available, I'm asking that you show up at the courthouse in Grand Haven on February 20th at 9 a.m. in courtroom 2A. There will be a trial regarding this case, and my children do need your support, and I'm hoping you will help me keep them from getting trafficked. They are both American citizens and they were born on this soil. I am an immigrant. I came here at the age of 16. And as far as I'm concerned, this is now home, and my future is here. But I do ask that you show your support and you help me keep Iberia and Jasmine in this country, because they do need you. Again, you might just think I'm some strange woman with a strange accent, but I do need your support right now, and I'm asking you to show up. I'm thankful for all the work you've been doing. I've been reading about it in the news, and yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing you there. And my kids' futures depend on this, so I'm hoping that you will keep this in mind and show up. Thank you very much, and I have 27 seconds left, but yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Good evening, Dave Moore in Allendale Township. Well, it's been a year since I first got to meet most of you. And congratulations on making it a year. Who would ever thought, right? The lessons have been many. Most of them unfortunately undesirable. You've seen the worst of humanity, in my opinion, and very little of the best. I'm sorry. You found out things about your county that you had no idea and had great disappointments in. Some of you helped create these disappointments. Some of you have found that there's a better way, and I'm proud of you for that. I want you to remember something. A year from now, the odds are everybody here will be replaced. And I mean everybody. So your time and your position is limited. It's important you do what you're called to do. It's important who you follow, whose voice you listen to. You know, you hear all the complaints, the thorns and the darts that are cast about what a rotten person you are for following the rules. Making appointments when you're the one who's supposed to make the appointments. Shame on you. I've expressed my concerns to this board about different items. Those concerns are still real to me. Don't become your enemy. The mafia style government that is attacking you and has been in Ottawa County for probably my whole life needs to be destroyed. And I say that standing here with no fear, for I run from nobody. But I do know who the players are. And I know this much, no matter what happens to me, at the end time, every one of us will be judged as an individual. Not for what we did as a group, but what we did as a person, as a human being. Did we stamp on people and trample them to get ahead, to have a higher authority, have an easier life? Or did we reach down and lift up those that were trampled to get them out of the mud? Remember, when you make decisions, you need to have a reason for how you decide. Make sure it's something you can stand on and be held accountable for. Again, I thank you for all the time. I know you had no idea how much time it was going to take of your life or how many sleepless nights. And I know you never expected that you'd have to be perfect when you sat in that chair. Because anything less than perfect is just like a bunch of chickens attacking the one that's bleeding. They're relentless. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Excuse me, my name's Rich Dossman. I'm from Wright Township in Ottawa County here. And I don't have anything prepared to say, but I've heard a number of people make comments about a lack of accomplishment on the part of this board. I remember the environment that swept you into the offices that you hold. We were going through COVID and there were a lot of restrictions placed on us. And I do see what you've accomplished. You've laid the groundwork so that, you know, when, not if, but when something like COVID comes again, whether it's manipulated or just incidental, that this county can now have our back, because the previous administration didn't have our back when we wanted to exercise our constitutional rights. And that was one of the major reasons that many of us voted the previous commissioners out. So I thank you for all that you've done. I thank you for the groundwork that you've laid. I understand that it won't be apparent until the next crisis comes, but when it does, many of your detractors, I think, will be your supporters then. So thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Lori Grassman, Robinson Township. So I've noticed that the term good governance has been the new Christian nationalism lately, it seems. But now I look here tonight and I'm realizing that everybody thought that there was one majority and another majority, and there seems to be a lot up here that say that you guys have bad. There is no good governance in this board. Yet I have a whole room sitting behind me. I think good governance of this board has been amazing because this is what they voted for in 2022. And so I think your accomplishments have been amazing. I think that you guys have been steadfast and bold no matter what they throw at you. And if they're going to continue to throw lawsuits, that's on their head. Good governance is transparency. The fact that we can see the budget every single time it gets put into the packet, all the way down to McDonald's receipts. That is transparency. I don't know what else transparent needs to be. Good governance is this board. So thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board?
Good evening, Chairman, fellow commissioners. I'm here
Sir,
as
can I have
not
your
to
name and
criticize
your
either
name and
of you. I'm
jurisdiction?
here to talk about the issue of the.
Could you please,
Sorry.
could you please state your name and jurisdiction?
Sorry, yeah, sorry. A lot of them know me, some don't. Chuck Richard, I'm a former Muskegon City Commissioner, as well as the City of Norton Shores. We face the same opposition or the same problem with the BC comp plan. And so that's what I'm here to speak about, your Campbell plan and why. The particulate that was coming out of there was well within the standard. I mean, never even approached it. By the way, I didn't tell you also that I'm a rocket scientist, and I'm a chemist from background. So you get an idea, and a vice president of aerospace. So I come with a lot of credentials. We only need to talk about, let's talk about the issue. The Campbell plan. I don't know what the affluent is or the particulate is. I haven't seen it, but I would tell you that the things you need to consider are what happens if you shut that plant down. You need to understand where you're going to get those jobs, where they're going to go, number one. Where is the revenue that's provided by that plant to the local community, either in government bodies, county body, the school systems? Those are the things. We lost over $1 million, okay, because of that, okay, as a result. So that's one thing. But what about the power? What about where are you going to get that power? You are not going to capture that with solar energy or wind energy or anything else. You cannot achieve that. I can guarantee you that. But there's a problem with that. They went outside, they bought it on the grid. Well, that went out of state. You charge the citizen, and I guarantee if you go this route, the citizens should come after you. They really should, because you've outsourced jobs at that point, and you've also increased their cost. That is not your role. That's not the role of government. You're actually to consider the people themselves. We the people, we hear that so often. So I'm not criticizing you. Please remember that. I'm trying to give you a perspective. So let's look at what happened. They did that. Well, everyone now in the governor, the good governor, yeah, right, is saying, get rid of it and go to green. Let's talk about the solar panels. That seems to be the most popular lately. Are you aware of the problems with solar panels? I apologize if I'm going to go over a little bit if I can complete the point. With the solar panels, there are 4 types. They all come from China. The top 10 are from China. But the one you got to worry about is the third one. It's called cadmium telluride. It's compounded in the kidneys. If you do that, you are dooming your children to health problems long term. I'm telling you, cadmium is not an element you want to mess with. Telling you that as a chemist. I'm telling you that why it's like mercury, guys. And please consider that, because the other types aren't so bad. I mean, they aren't as bad, but they have some drawbacks, and there are some new ones coming up. Okay, but the ones that are currently on the market. And by the way, I told our township that was going to do it that I would sue them personally as individuals, not as a government body, but as an individual. I would come at them for harming. So that's why. But please consider that. If you want, I was going to pen a letter to you guys.
Thank
Tell
you.
you some of the, okay?
There's a second public comment time as well coming up on the agenda, if you'd like.
All right,
like
thanks.
to continue. Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board? All right, there is a second public comment time later on in the agenda. But for now, we'll move to number 6, approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion, please?
So moved. Oh, second.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? We're going to go to a roll call vote since we have one commissioner participating remotely.
Sir, sorry. Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mr. Bonham,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Eden,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
and Mr. Moss.
Yes.
And motion passes.
Thank you. Next up is consent resolutions. Could I please get a motion to approve the consent resolutions?
So moved. Kids.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? This will be the same. We will need to go to a roll call vote on these as well.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mr. Bergman,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Bonham,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Curran,
Yes.
Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
and Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Number 8, agenda and action requests. 8A, county policy on policies, a second reading. The suggested motion is to approve the revised county policies policy.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and support. Any discussion? Commissioner Zylstra.
Yeah, thanks, appreciate that. I know this is a second reading. We've kind of looked at this a few times. Jack, can you just kind of walk us through the majority vote situation? Looking at MCL, and frankly, I'm kind of confused about when we can use 2/3, when majority applies, et cetera.
Sorry about that. Under the, now let me get to it. Kind of catch me off guard there.
No, sorry about that, Jack. I didn't mean to.
It's okay. Everything that I see in MCL 46 has majority.
Right.
It does not have anything written in there as far as a 2/3 majority. In fact, 46.3, as has already been cited, a majority of the members of the county board of commissioners of a county constitutes a quorum for the transaction of ordinary business of the county. So that, in a nutshell, speaks about how you can vote. You don't need a you don't need a 2/3 majority.
Right.
A simple majority is enough.
Right, and I think that's kind of borne out by section 2, where it talks about shall act by the majority.
Correct.
Just that last sentence, I kind of been looking at it the last day or so. Second to last sentence where it says, The county board of commissioners may require in its bylaws that 2/3 on a non-agenda item, and I just can't, not a lawyer, but I'm not sure what a non-agenda item might be. It would seem like if it's on the agenda, that's something we're voting on, but if it's not on the agenda, how would we vote on it?
I don't know, but
Okay.
the key word that I see in there
Mhm.
is may.
Okay,
It's not a shall.
right. Yeah, I just wanted to get clarification on that. I think like, yeah, the second reading on it, I think it's 99% clear that we vote always by majority, just that last
Yeah.
non-agenda item phrase is kind of throwing me, so
I
appreciate
wasn't
that.
with the legislature when they did that.
But you were.
I was not.
Oh, you were, okay.
I just want
I
to
was
make.
like, wow, you really can't tell me what they were thinking that.
I just want to make sure it's clear.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else?
I had those same questions, but fine.
Okay, Commissioner Belknap.
Just a quick comment and gratitude to our administration for laying out a well prepared, model of the old language versus the new language. What's changed? I think it really assisted the committee in moving this policy forward. That's it.
Thank you. Anything else, or we'll go to another roll call vote? Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
No worries. Mr. Bonema,
Yes.
Mrs. Eb.
I'm sorry. Did you say Bonham or Belknap?
Bonema, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
I apologize.
Sorry. Okay. Mrs. Ebel,
Yes.
Mr. Berg,
Yes.
Mrs. Medema,
Yes.
Mrs. Wenzel,
Yes.
Ms. Cosby,
Yes.
Mrs. Rhodey,
Yes.
Mrs. Carmen,
Yes.
Mr. Zylstra,
Yes.
Mr. Belknap,
Yes.
and Mr. Moss.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, we're up to 9A, committee reports, and first up, the only one is Department of Equalization. O'Brien, come on down.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to share the equalization report with you tonight. I know this is what you've all been waiting for, so glad we could finally get to it. The equalization report is a little bit different from maybe some of the other department reports in that we do 3 reports for the equalization. We do the equalization report, which is in April. We do the apportionment report, which will come in October. And then this report, which you'll be receiving tonight, which is more or less an overview of what my department does. So, and also just before we get started, I just wanted to congratulate, I know she's not here, but this will be the first time I will be presenting before Commissioner Wenzel. So congratulations on your appointment. So I'm going to be covering this evening the 5 primary functions of the equalization department. Some of them are statutory, some of them are contractual, but I'll just be covering the 5 primary components that we do. I also hope to touch on a few cost of service delivery comparisons. I know that is something that Administrator Gibbs has been asking for, and so I hope to touch on a couple of those. And lastly, I'll be covering just kind of a quick overview of what you might say, what the determinations of our department was this year. So going forward, what the values will be. So the first thing, equalization. Obviously, this is the namesake of our department. Equalization is essentially a study of the market. What is the real estate, both real and personal property? What are the values doing? We study that 2 different ways. If there are enough sales available, we look at the sales and we do a sales study. With a sales study, we compare the sale prices to the assessed values. and determine a ratio to say how much do we need to go up or down in order to meet market value. If we don't have enough sales, then we do an appraisal study. And appraisal studies in Ottawa County is largely used for agricultural, commercial, and industrial classes of property, whereas the sales studies are done in residential where we have ample sales to do a study. The overall function, though, of both, regardless of which method we use, is simply to study the market. What is the market telling us? Some statistics that we can look at. The equalization studies, if you look at the graph on the left, we're looking at the sales that my clerks have processed this year. And if you look at the top line, that is the total number of sales that they have processed historically. I think we're looking at about a 20-year window there. And you can see the last couple of years, the amount of sales that we've been processing has been decreasing. We started to notice that trend last year, and that trend has been continuing this year. And I'll be touching on this a little bit later in the presentation as well. The line underneath it, though, is the amount of sales that we're using in our equalization study. And you can see that that line, while it does drop off, it does not drop off nearly as much as the overall sales. And what that tells me is that we are still seeing a good amount of what we would call usable sales or arm's length sales that represent the market, which is a good thing for equalization. The graph on the right is showing the amount of appraisals that are conducted each year by my appraisal staff. They do great work, and as you can see, that's a lot of appraisals for 3 appraisers to do in a year. The second primary function of the equalization department is apportionment, and apportionment is another statutory requirement of our department. Apportionment in our department is largely aiding and auditing. So we're aiding the local units in developing their millage rates to be applied, and then we audit them to make sure that they are compliant with all applicable laws. Again, I present all of that to the commissioners in October. In 2023, I presented the apportionment report, and then we revised it again in November. And if you remember, that was because the Jamestown Township Library millage was passed after the apportionment report was approved. So then we came back in November and approved that. The third primary function of the equalization department is property description and mapping. This is largely done by two gentlemen in our department that are mappers. And if you are familiar with anything related to GIS and you pull up a map and you see the parcel lines on there, those lines get there by these gentlemen. And they do a fantastic job both drawing the lines on the GIS software and also writing legal descriptions, just making sure that the process flows smoothly. The property description and mapping guys, just a few statistics about what they've done this past year. You can see as you look through those numbers, they're just a little bit down. Again, because the amount of deed recordings is down, we have not seen as many properties being split and combined. And so their work volume is down a little bit. But overall, those are still pretty healthy numbers if you look at it over a historical average. So how are we doing, right? The equalization department, we had talked about our cost of service delivery. There is no comparisons that I'm aware of that are readily available. So this is information that I went out to other equalization departments and I just looked for a unit of comparison that can say, how are we doing compared to other counties? What I found or what I explored is what is our budget as a percentage of the county general fund. And as you can see on there, as the budget decreases, or I guess I'm saying that wrong, but as the parcel count increases, Ottawa County Equalization's budget as a percentage of the general fund is comparatively slightly lower than counties of comparable size. So we're not that much lower. I'd say overall, we're doing about average, but based on the size of our county, we're doing pretty well. Our fourth primary function is local unit assistance. And this is something that is, while it is statutory, it is a little bit more something that we may provide. It is not something that we necessarily have to provide, but this is something that my department has always taken quite seriously, that we find that we're providing a better service to our taxpayers if both the county and the assessors work together. And we do that by providing technical assistance. We provide assessing procedural guidance. We work on standards with the assessors, a number of things that we can do just to work together to make sure that we're all on the same page. One of the things that I wanted to mention in this category is my deputy, Josh Morgan, won an award with the Michigan Association of Assessors for the Stronger Together Mentorship Award. He won that last fall for his work with mentoring our local assessors. There's a component of what we do called developing land values, and that tends to be fairly complicated. And he is frankly exceptionally good at that function. And he uses that talent to teach our local assessors how to do a better job. And he won an award for it. So I just wanted to mention that this evening. And then lastly, assessing, which this is not something that we are statutorily required to provide. This is something that we provide contractually. We were approached in all of these instances by the local jurisdictions, asking if we would provide this service for them. As you can see on there, we provide assessing services for 5 jurisdictions: Grand Haven City, Crockery Township, Hudsonville, Blendon, and Coopersville. And we've had some of those contracts going back, I'm going to say, over a dozen years, and some of them we've only had for a couple of years, but they're all going quite well. We had one jurisdiction approach us in 2023, asking us if we could provide that service for them. We provided them a number, but they just ultimately decided to go a different direction, which we are totally fine with. If they're able to provide their service themselves, or they feel they can do a better job, then fantastic. So, and then additionally, we